Have I got a special one for you today? Battle of the Vintage Ales.
Life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. There are certain times on this channel when I really do relish trying out a certain beer, but today I think this has to go down as probably one of the most, for me, one of the most exciting comparisons that I've done on the channel. And it is a battle between the Batemans Vintage Ale, which dates from 2014, as you can see on the label. And I've got a Fuller's Ale here, not 2022. Everybody seems to be reviewing that on YouTube at the moment. I'm doing 2021. Now this is available on the Fuller's website, but it's 20 quid. It's a bit expensive, I know, but Vintage Ale from Fuller's, in my opinion, is worth it. Now, I'm going to go into a lot of detail about the ingredients on these. I also want to go into the history of the beers themselves. I'm not going to be doing at all the history of the breweries. I've done it numerous times on the various Fuller's reviews and on the few Batemans reviews that I've done as well. Now, there is a caveat that is attached to the Fuller's Vintage Ale. This recipe changes every year. Now, I know that certain people who watch this channel do buy Fuller's Vintage Ale, and they have tried it before in the past various years. I would wager, and I've tried a few, I've tried 3 in my time. I've tried 2018, 2019, and I've tried 2020. And I've got a bottle of 2020 downstairs that I've given to a mate. But I've also reviewed the 2020 on the channel as well. Now 2021, this is obviously a year old, but it's a special one. It's their 25th anniversary. And as I say, the recipe does change every year, but it's got an underlying theme. And some people have put in the comments when I talk about Fuller's Vintage Ale that it's based on 1845. Some people have said it's based on Golden Pride. It's actually not. It's based on the best ingredients they can get at the time. Now, they used to do that in the past. Well, no, I'm not going to go into that here. I'm going to just explain a little bit about the Batemans Vintage Ale. Now, the Batemans Vintage Ale is an interesting one. Whereas the Fuller's Vintage Ale was specifically designed back in the 90s, 97 I think it was, the first one came out. It was specifically designed by Fuller's. The Fuller's marketing team said they wanted a beer that would come out every year, and it would be like a vintage wine. Now, you know my views on wine.
Wine.
Rose magic.
Wine. I'm not a hairdresser living up in Dublin. Wine.
But for once, a marketing team, when they mentioned wine, actually got something right. And what they did was a beer that would come out every year, and it would be the best ingredient. So years ago, they don't do it now unfortunately, but years ago they used to have competitions which was the best malt that came from the malt harvest, or the various malts, the various hops, which would be the best yield and the best flavours, etc. So they would pick them and come up with the brew. And that was what Vintage Ale was, Fuller's Vintage Ale. Now the Batemans is a little bit different, well, a lot different to that actually. It was actually discovered by mistake, if you like. So what happened was there was a barley wine that was brewed in the 1970s, and it was done by the owner, and it was for his son, and he's basically said to his son, you can open this on your 21st birthday, which was in 1981. So they did, and it was quite nice. But the head brewer hid away 7 bottles of it, 7 or 8 bottles, and it it stayed hidden until 2000. Well, not hidden, but they knew it was there, but they just didn't open it. And in 2006, one of the head brewers said, "Look, we need to open this beer and see what it tastes like." And they opened it, and it absolutely blew their mind. So since then, they've been trying to replicate that kind of flavour. Now, there's a couple of alarm bells on the Batemans vintage ale, and yeah, I'm going to tell you now because I'll get it out of the way. This is fermented in wine barrels.
And tip 4, men don't order wine, all right?
Now that is a fucking alarm, and it's French wine barrels as well. And if the French go anywhere near beer, it's usually going to be crap. But somehow, I don't think it is. And I will say, I'm joking. You know, I don't really hate the French. I take the piss, yes, and why not? I mean, they take the piss out of us, and I love it. I really do love that banter, but in all seriousness, when I try stuff like the Fuller's Golden Pride and them strong barley wines, I think they're called barley wine for a reason, because I do tend to find that they have sherry overtones on them, and it's actually quite pleasant, believe it or not. Now, yeah, I know I have a lot of vitriol against wine. I'm not a fan of drinking wine at all. I'll cook with it, yes. However, when it's mixed with malt and hops, or how can I put this? The fruitiness of wine is brought out in a beer. It's very nice indeed. Them rich, dark fruit flavours coupled with some ethanol. It really can work, in my opinion. And in fact, it's one of my favourite styles of beer. And it's good that they've done that, because I think that kind of thing, the kind of flavour they're going for, is what this country does best. Now, I'm always going on about this, and I've been going on about this for 2 years, about how British beer styles are ignored. And I think with these two beers, and I've not tried the Batemans, but it looks really good on paper. The ingredients look good, which I'll go on to in a sec. But certainly the the Fuller's stuff, certainly the Fuller's stuff, in my opinion, this is the pinnacle of British brewing. And I don't think it gets better than this. Yes, you have your everyday session beers, and you have your certain styles, such as your milds, your porters and your stouts, etc. But for me, this is a little bit special. And I think when other countries are, quite rightly so, the Belgians, the Czechs and the Germans are flaunting their wares when it comes to beers, we don't really do that. And that's a real shame. We seem to be het up in this catch-all of IPAs and American style beers with really, really citrusy pine, resinous piney hops, that type of thing, which, don't get me wrong, they do have their place in certain English beers, but I think there's been far too much overemphasis on that, and I personally believe we need to return to our roots. I've been saying that for the last 2 years. I've been saying that cask beer really should be checked out. Forget the macro brewed crap that's out there. Go for something just a little bit better, and you will be surprised. I've said it till I'm blue in the face, and I'll carry on saying it as well, because it is a passion of mine. And if at least one person stops drinking the crap that they're serving up in pubs now in terms of macro brewed lager, and even macro brewed ale such as John Smith's and that kind of thing, and they get on to drinking locally produced fresh cask ale, then my mission has succeeded. And I can rest easy that at least one person is not consuming the crap that the macro brewers expect us to consume. However, I am rambling. So without further ado, and I think this is the most important part of this video, I'm going to get on with the ingredients in both of these beers. So the Batemans Vintage Ale, I'll start with that first. So this is a limited release vintage ale, and as I say, it was originally discovered by accident. It is in the style of a barley wine, and it's in a 500ml bottle, like the Fuller's Vintage Ale. It's 7.5%. The Fuller's is coming in at 8.5, so it's down a percent on the ABV. It's bottle conditioned. It is designed to be matured in the bottle, and when I say matured, it says, it's got it on here, best before 2039. So whether I'm still on this ball of clay in 2039, I have no idea. But I want to drink this before I shuffle off this mortal coil. It's, as I say, it's 2014 vintage. It was quite cheap, believe it or not. It was £3.75. Now, You can argue the cost to flavour ratio, etc. The Fuller's was a little bit more expensive. I think that was over £6, £6.75. So it's £3 dearer. But let me just read out what's on the side, and then I'll go into a little bit of detail, because it does give the ingredients on here and a lot of spiel. But I want to delve a little bit further into what the ingredients actually are. So, limited release 2014, oak matured for richness. The heritage of this vintage ale really is exciting. We used to brew a barley wine back in the 1970s, and my father George took the last 10 cases of the final bottling and hid them under the fermenting vessels to be opened on April the 5th, 1981, on his 21st birthday. This is George, George Bateman. Then he forgot about them. Joey Lehman, the present fermenting room foreman, had a word with me in 2007 and said, Stuart, hang on. Oh, his father was George Bateman. Right, sorry, I'm fucking brain fart there. Stuart, are we ever going to open these bottles which your father hid for you to open on your... hang on, I'll read that again. Mr. Magoo strikes again. Stuart, are we ever going to open these bottles to which your father hid for you, or are you going to try and pretend that you're just not 21 yet? Joey and I opened a bottle to find it was the most delicious and exciting beer we had ever tasted, just bursting with flavours. Now that's what I got from when I first tried the Fuller's Vintage Ale. It absolutely blew my mind. To this day, I still say it's the best beer I have ever tasted, and that includes German beer. I mean, there have been some absolutely fantastic German beers that have blown my mind, but I think that one was like, I don't know, it was like an epiphany. It was, for me, the best a beer could taste. It really, and there's some that's come very close, and Tint Meadow came very, very close as well. But that, for me, the 2020 Fuller's Vintage Ale just absolutely blew my mind. That was the first one I tried. The flavours you get from this are plums, port, malt, brandy, vanilla and almonds. Now that sounds horrendous in a beer, but believe me, that is excellent in my opinion. I get that this may not be for everyone. Some people may find this too rich, some people may find it a bit too boozy, if you know what I mean. It's hefty ABV, and I imagine there is some ethanol on that, and they might just not like the flavour. But for me, this is what British or English beer is all about. So you get plums, port, malt, brandy, vanilla and almonds. This is long matured, oak aged vintage ale, and it's perfect match to that 21st birthday beer. Cheers. Brewer's notes. This 2014 vintage ale, the third edition of our wholly opulent vintage ale, is perhaps the boldest yet, luxuriating in wine casks. Wine casks from the Bordeaux region of France. Has left a distinct and characteristic mark on their complex brew. I used to go to a region that wasn't too far from Bordeaux. My ex-missus, her family, I'm sure I've told you about this here before, but they lived in a place near Angoulême, and it was called Châteauneuf. Very nice part of the world, believe me, but the beer was absolutely horrendous, and all I had was wine. So it was a miserable week whenever we went over there in terms of alcohol consumption. Her parents were actually really nice people. I still speak to them now. They're really good people. What else have we got? Yeah, so brewed using malt from Propino, barley grown in the Yorkshire Wolds, crystal and chocolate malts from the Fawcett maltings in Yorkshire. Fucking lot of Yorkshire stuff in this. You got wine and Yorkshire, Christ almighty, and Challenger hops grown on the Hulme Farm family hop farm in southeast Kent. A unique, rich, spicy, full flavoured classic English ale with a French twist. Ugh. I'm joking. I am joking. Now, I want to go over the malts and the hops and the ingredients that they're talking about. So let's break that down. So they're saying it's using Propino malts. What is that? That's just a pale spring malt. It's a 2-row malt that's grown in spring, and it's the base malt for this. So that's your base malt that they're talking about. The barley that they're talking about from the Yorkshire Wold, Yorkshire Wold, or Wold means like a high open moor basically. They are crystal and chocolate malts. You know, chocolate malt, what sort of flavour that's going to give. it gives it like a nice bitterness, a nice roasted bitterness, but there is a little touch of sweetness to it as well. But the crystal malt that's on this is going to give that little bit more sweetness, because, as I've explained in lots of times, crystal malt is basically malt that's roasted while it's producing sugar. The shoots that are supposedly going to consume this sugar, they die off and the sugar's left, and when it's put into the boil, it makes it nice and sweet, perfect for dark English beers. And they've come from the Fawcett maltings, which are based in Yorkshire. The hops, well, the hop, there's only one mention of the hop, and that is the Challenger hop, and that comes from southeast Kent, and that farm is the Hulme farm. Now that's quite a big concern, and they don't just grow hops, they're a proper dairy farm, livestock, they have livestock on there. They also grow fruit there as well. Hops make up a small percentage of it. There's a reason for that, and I'm not sure whether you're aware, but hops are very, very labour intensive to harvest, and I think that's why hops are dying out. I wouldn't say dying out, but hop farming has been scaled back a hell of a lot. Now, I was reading an interview with this fella Hulme, and he made a comment, and I didn't like it, to be fair. He was saying that he employs a lot of Eastern Europeans to harvest the hops and basically everything on the farm that needs harvesting. He employs Eastern Europeans, but he said because English people are too lazy to do the work. Well, my friend, that is fucking bollocks. It's not that they're too lazy, it's just it doesn't pay enough. Now, I know that's not your fault, you have to make a profit, but people have to live. So I don't want to cast aspersions on Eastern Europeans that are coming over here to work. They will work, but look at the conditions they're living in. They usually live away from their families. They're living in caravans, actually on the farm. I'm not sure whether they're charged rent or not, but people just don't want to do that work. It's not that they're lazy, it's just it's a maximum amount of effort for little returns. And you can argue the semantics of it, and I fully get your argument, but try not to say English workers are lazy. They're not lazy. You know, the Industrial Revolution came from this country, and it wasn't achieved by lazy workers. People aren't lazy. People want to make a living. People want to, you know, have something to show for their labour. And I'm not saying you're exploiting them, but you can argue the pros and cons of capitalism, and there are some pros. Don't get me wrong. I'm not totally against capitalism, but you know, there's an old thing: a fair day's work for a fair day's wage. That's my philosophy, and that's what I've always pursued. And there's times when I haven't, and I have worked my bollocks off. I've been ripped off in the past. So try not to say English workers are lazy. It's insulting and it's inaccurate. Rant over. Anyway, Mr. Hulme, you got your Challenger hops in here, which are, as I say, grown in East Kent, a traditional hop growing region of the United Kingdom. The ironic thing is, they're quite away from Kent. Fuller's an era, and they don't use Kentish hops in the vintage ale. I'll get onto that in a bit. But anyway, sorry, I missed a bit out on the malt. I've just remembered now. They also use flagon malt, and if you've heard that before, this St Peter's brewery use flagon malt in their flagon ale, which they call it Farmer's Flagon, and it's a type of two-row malt. Again, I think the flagon malt is a winter. It's a barley. I'm saying malt. It's actually a barley, and usually that flagon malt is used in animal feed, you know, for cows and stuff like that. But it is very good in beer. So they've used that in there along with the other malts, you know, the chocolate malt and the what's the other malt? The crystal malt that's in there. So all in all, you know, with the fermentation in the wine barrels, this should make for a very, very interesting beer. Now, that's the Batemans over with. Let's get on to the Fullers. Right, let's just read what they got on here. 2021 Fuller's Vintage Ale, limited edition, an annual limited edition brew. Fuller's Vintage Ale is most special beer to leave our Griffin brewery each year. Every vintage ale recipe is unique from the last, yet all are made to mature with the flavours developing over time. Now, on its 25th edition, 2021, a landmark year for vintage ale. At its heart, pale ale, Carrigold malts combined with DRC. I'll get onto that in a bit. A double roasted crystal malt, not Democratic Republic of Congo. to deliver toffee and raisin sweetness. Turning to the hops, we're showcasing younger UK varieties for their luscious fruitiness. Endeavour Hop brings plummy tones, while Olicana, and I'll get onto these in a bit, Olicana and as yet the unnamed experimental hop CF182, that's got a name now, I'll go into that in a bit, add tropical and orange notes, all complemented as ever by the zesty marmalade character of our famous Fuller's yeast. Yes, the zesty marmalade is a big thing in Fuller's yeast. Now, if you really want to try that zesty marmalade flavour, or if you want to see what that tastes like, try the Bengal Lancer. You get it in abundance with that. It really does stand out, and it's lovely. I really do like that. Bottle conditioned and natural sediment will form, so store upright and pour carefully. Again, they're saying not to pour it in, I assume. But yeah, that's basically it. As I say, 8.5%, and it's saying bottle conditioned and strong beer. It's got it down as a strong beer. Now, let's go into them ingredients in a little bit more detail. So it's using pale ale malt and this as the base malt, similar to the Batemans stuff as well. And it's also got Caragol malts in there, which give it a very nice roasted, if you can imagine toast, white toast. It gives it that type of flavour along with the roasted malt type flavour as well. I refuse to say roasty toasty because that is absolute fucking bullshit and it doesn't mean anything. I know the little Welsh fella says that a lot on his channel, and it fucking grinds my gears because it doesn't mean anything. What I'm trying to get across, it's like toasted white bread, if you can imagine that, sort of lightly done, well, not lightly done, but just a normal bit of toast. It gives it that kind of bready, toasted, roasted flavour. I've just fucking said it, haven't I? But you get what I'm trying to say. I hate these adjectives that don't mean fuck all. So I'm going to try and explain what I mean in as much detail as possible. So the double roasted crystal malt, what is that? Well, it's basically they roasted it twice. And why have they done that? Well, it just gives it a little bit more intensity, and it also, where you roast them sugars as well, it gives it like an almost molasses type of flavour, or caramelised sugar type flavour, if you know what I mean. And it's very nice, and it suits this beer down to the ground. So again, I can see why they've done that. It gives it a rich aroma of sweetness, and it also gives it some fruit on the aroma as well. So again, perfectly suited to this style of beer. And when I say this style of beer, I'm talking about a barley wine, because effectively that's what this is. You can call it an old ale stroke barley wine, but I think this is more nearing, certainly the Bateman stuff as well, and obviously the Fuller stuff, but the Bateman stuff too. That's airing towards barley wine rather than the traditional lower ABV old ale. Well, the hops are Target hops, and again, you get some subtle spice from Target hops. They're very nice. You do see them occasionally in bitters, and they're an English hop, and they have been grown in Worcestershire. That's where all the hops from the region where these hops have come from. There's also this CF182 experimental hop. Now that's been called Opus, and it comes from the Charles Farham. I wouldn't say it's an institute, but they do a lot of research and they come up with a lot of experimental hops. If you've ever heard of Jester hops, if you've heard of Harlequin, Godiva hops, they were all, I will say invented, because they effectively were, they were invented there, and they've been used in quite a few beers since, quite a few English beers, and they give it a unique twist. They're sort of moving towards the citrusy end of the scale, and you know, I don't balk at the thought of having citrus in beer, because again, you know, Helles, you get lemon citrus in there. I'm not totally against the idea of citrus in beer. I am against these fruit cocktails that you get passing themselves off as IPAs. It just fucking winds me up, to be honest, and it winds me up that renowned brewers are trying to copy that style. So again, I'm not trying to completely wipe out the idea of having citrus in hops. No, they definitely have their place, and what this Charles Farham is doing, I think, is a great thing. You know, coming up with new varieties of hops. Why not? You can only experiment and get some great flavours. Who knows, you may come up with a hop that the Americans want to copy. It could change the style of English beer for the better, or not change it for the better, but improve on the English style of beer. Who knows? But But this CF182, the Opus hop, that's quite citrusy, and it contains orange and floral notes. And some say that it's quite similar to the Styrian Goldings that come from Slovenia, which, again, I think is a great hop, and they use it in not just English beers, they use them in Belgian beers too, and they do give a nice flavour in the beers that I've had Styrian Goldings in. So if we're growing not a clone, but something similar over here and putting our own unique twist on it, I think that's brilliant. I think it's fantastic, and that's usually used as a late addition or an aroma hop, and that's added towards the end of the boil to give it all them lovely flavours and aromas. So again, another great thing that is happening in this country in a time when they're sort of scaling back on hop farming, because if you look at the statistics for hop production in the UK, they have fallen, unfortunately. And I do believe it's what Mr. Hulme was saying, that because they're so labour intensive, farmers just can't pay the wages to harvest these hops. And if they do come up with some mechanical automated way of picking hops, I mean, that would really be a boon for farmers, hop farmers over here. And who knows, it may come up with even more varieties of English hops. So if there's any potential inventors out there who can come up with a way of harvesting hops automatically, fucking get the old grey matter working, because we need you more than ever. Now, I mentioned another hop in there, and that was Olicana. And Olicana, again, is another citrusy type hop. You think this is going to be a really citrusy beer, but when I've just described all the malts, them two together, and of course it all depends when you put these in the boil. Hops can taste different depending on the temperature that you put them in and at the stage you put them in the boil too. So don't take this as this is what the beer is going to taste like. There will be hints of it, but it's not going to be dominant unless that's what the brewer wanted. But just bear in mind that hops do taste different at different temperatures and at what stage they put into the boil. But this Olicana is being used as a flavouring and a bittering hop as well. And the bittering that it has is quite a complex bitterness, but it's like bitter citrus, which sounds interesting. I'll reserve judgment if it's going to be something like bitter grapefruit. I'm not a massive fan of grapefruit, but I'll reserve judgment on that. But it also contains mango, passion fruit and peach, that type of flavour. And grapefruit as well, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately. Grapefruit can work in beer. If it's too overpowering, I think it just fucking ruins it, to be honest. But it's something that brewers and hop growers alike think they need to do to win people over. I don't have the statistics on what people like in beer when it comes to hops anymore. They're obviously at the coalface, so they probably know a lot more than I. I'm not going to cast aspersions. I don't have any evidence to back it up. I'm just speaking from personal experience, which doesn't really mean much, but that over the top citrusy fruit, mango, passion fruit, that thing, yeah, it's not something that really sets me alight with passion or excitement. But I'm digressing. Yeah, and that's really all I can say about the ingredients. I say this was first brewed in 1997, so this is the 2021 is the 25th anniversary of this beer, and that's why I've chosen the 2021 to do and not the 22, because this has been matured for a year, and it's also a special one as well. So I'd imagine they have pulled out all the stops. Well, they pull out all the stops every year for the best ingredients, but the 25th anniversary, I think they were going to do a really good one. Should be holding it up here and showing you, because I've got it down there and I'm looking at it. But yeah, the original one came out in '97, and as I say, it was supposedly going to be a yearly thing, which they have done, to resemble a vintage wine. Again, like the Batemans, this is good for years. The best before is 2031, so it's saying that it's and that's weird actually, because this has come out in 2021, and that's saying best before 2031, so that's 10 years, and this is saying it's good for, well, 30 years, so interesting. Who knows? Right, now finally got all that out of the way, let's get it open and let's see what's going on. Right, let's open the Batemans up first. I've not opened these boxes, I don't know what the bottles look like, so there you go. Right, here's the Batemans. Vintage ale. Nice. This is room temperature. It's been in the fridge for about, I'd say half an hour, just to give it a very, very slight chill. But that's it. I don't want to drink these cold at all. I want to drink these just at the right temperature. It's quite chilly in this room actually, so it's going to be just at the right temperature, right cellar temperature in my opinion. And there's the Fuller's Vintage Ale, and it's numbered as well. If you can see that on the bottle there, if autofocus wants to fucking do its job, it's got the numbers there. Right, what have we got a number on this one? No, we don't. I will say they do look very nice. They've packaged them both really well, and they do look a little bit special. Oh, and this is numbered. I do lie. Sorry, I do apologise, Batemans. This is numbered here. It's got a number up there as well. Coolio. Yeah, nice. Right, let's get these open and see what's going on. Right, I'm just going to peel this off. I don't want to murder it too much because I may keep the bottles. I don't know why. Where's the ye olde cap lifter? Right, just to give you a little bit of an indication on what is what. The vintage ale, the Batemans vintage ale, they say to put into a wine glass. I do not possess such a thing, so I'm not going to use one. But what I have got, I'm going to put this back. I was going to use a tulip glass, but I'm not going to use that now. I'm actually going to use this. This is a Belgian beer glass, and it's from the Brigand brand. It doesn't look too clean actually, but I'm going to use it anyway. It might be all right. Maybe just me. I did clean this glass out before. Is it just? No, it's not. I think it's on the outside of the glass. It's not on the inside. And I'm going to pour the. I think I'll put the Batemans into this Watney's thistle glass. Believe it or not, that's a thistle glass. That is for Scotch ale. Very symbolic. That is. Well, they call it a thistle glass. It's not a true thistle glass. A true thistle glass does look like a thistle. It's got like a bulbous bottom on it and quite a large vase-like stem. Not stem. Funnel. Right, let's get the Batemans open first and stop talking shite. Right. Let's get a little bit into the glass. Now the ABVs are high on both of these, so I am not going to hang about because the head won't hang about. Well, the head's fucking dissipated on that one. Let's get it in here. Right, so there's the two in the glass. They look a bit different actually. This looks slightly amber. You can't really see it unfortunately, but this is more of a ruby colour. Let's get the aromas. Right, the Batemans first. Wow, that really is vinous. And to be honest, it smells. Yeah, when they say port, they were not joking. It does remind me of that. Really big wine overtones on this. Red wine, well not red wine, but port as they say. It's also quite fruity as well. Dark fruit, like they say, plum, raisin, that kind of thing. But there is a vinous overtone, almost like vinegar, but it's not vinegar if you know what I mean. It's that sharp grape type aroma. It's subtle, but it's there. But it's gradually giving way to really big fruity notes, really big dark fruity notes. And it smells like an amazing barley wine, I will say that. But that first opening, it really did give a lot of wine-like notes. Oh, it smells so good. There's almost like a creaminess to it, and I imagine that's coming from that crystal malt. I do tend to find that it does give it like a real sweet cream-like aroma to it. And it's nice. Oh look, there's even some malty overtones coming through there now. Wow, that's so complex. There's ethanol notes on there. It's reminding me a lot of the Golden Pride. Similar sort of aromas to that. And there is even the vanilla that they're talking about as well. I am getting that too. Do you know, that's really complex. I could sit here for at least 10 minutes trying to describe all these different aromas. Oh, it's just a bombardment of different aromas. Let me put that down because I can see the head dissipating on the vintage ale now. So let's get a nose full of this. Oh, this is even more fruity. Initial thing was black cherry. That was the first thing that hit me. But there's also a hell of a lot of fruit and quite a bit of citrus on there as well. But it just smells fuller, no pun intended. But again, there's that dark fruit, the raisin and damson. This definitely has more of an acidic type aroma, if you know what I mean. A more tangy, tart style aroma, if you know what I mean. It's sharper. This is like smoother and rounder when it comes to fruit. There's maltiness on there as well. Oh, again, so complex. These beers really, the aromas are so complex. They really are. It's pointless me just going on. You get the idea. It's basically a barley wine, but with various twists on it. Very, very complex. I get so many aromas from this. It really is a bombardment of aromas from both of them as well. So, proof is in the tasting. Let's get it down the hatch. Good Elf. Wow. Whoa. Lovely ethanol warming on that. Very complex. I'm going to have to dive in again. There's so much going on with that. On the palate, there isn't the masses of flavour I was expecting. It's very... The body isn't as big, but that's not a bad thing. The flavours are definitely there. The finish is very, very dry. Again, a lot in common with wine on that one, a red wine. There's toffee and caramel notes on that, but I was expecting bigger flavours, to be honest. But they're all there. I mean, you know, as I say, you've got the toffee malt, the caramel malt that's on there. You've got the fruit, but you've got that dry finish. And that dry finish, I think it takes away from the body. Let me try the Fuller's Vintage Ale. We are going to dive into that. You Good Elf. Right. So, the Fuller's Vintage Ale. Almost night and day. More carbonation, definitely. Bigger flavours on the palate. And the finish is bigger too, I have to say. Rounder and smoother caramel malt. Not so much of the toffee malt that you get in the Batemans. The body, I think, is a bit more robust on that. That could be the carbonation that's helping that too. But the finish is very, very long. Again, ethanol on there too. That is part of the finish. The fruit is just off the scale on this. But I'm also getting them citrusy notes. Very subdued, but they're there. But there is an underlying orangey zest in this that you can pick up. That's just so complex, and it's got a hell of a lot more flavour-wise. I think it's got a hell of a lot more going on. The fruits are bigger, the malt character is bigger, and it just I don't know. This is going to sound really strange, but it just feels like there's more quality in there. Now this has been matured. This is 2014, so obviously this is slightly fresher. But if I revisit it, this is actually smoother and creamier, would you believe? Very much like a port, like they do. I would say port or sherry, one of the two. But really nice. I mean, I'm comparing the best with the best. Well, I'm not saying I'm comparing the best. Certainly the Fuller's Vintage Ale is fantastic. Everyone I've tried, and the recipe does change every year with the Fuller's Vintage Ale. The Batemans, this is the first time I've tried it. I'm going to pour a little bit more in there and see if I can get any more flavours on there. Get a bit of a head going on it as well. Get a bit more carbonation going on it. Let's you can definitely get them wine notes on there. But let's dive in again. I will say this does slip down quite nicely, and as I say, it's got a drier finish. But I think on the palate, the flavours just aren't as big as the Fuller's Vintage Ale. There's a slight nuttiness to it as well, like I wouldn't say hazelnut, but I don't know, maybe almond or something like that. You can definitely get that in there, and you've got the usual Christmas cake style flavour that you normally get with the barley wine, but there's also hints of, yeah, like I say, red wine, sherry, that type of thing. It's definitely got an element of that in there. But it's nice. I mean, that is what a barley wine should taste like. Maybe the ABV should be a little bit stronger, but that is what your barley wine should taste like. Now, most people, when they think of barley wine, they think of gold label. Forget it. That is not a fucking barley wine. Yes, it did have a heritage some time ago, and it has got a history. But to me, this is what I would consider a really good barley wine. Really loving the aromas on the Batemans though. It has got some. Oh, look, and that's even more Christmas cakey now. You know, with that really the dark raisin. You know, when you get crunchy raisins. That's what that's smelling like now. I mean, to be honest, I could sit here all night and pick out different aromas that are on here. Vanilla, raisin, sultana. You know, the Christmas cake aromas. Definitely got that there. But there's also wine aromas like sort of sherry. Port, as they say. I mean, that's I don't drink port. I don't think I've ever had port, have I? I don't think so. No, port is very, again, sherry and port are fortified wines. So there are, well, certainly the port is like a digestant. You know, where the Germans have their herbal Jägermeister and what's the other stuff they have in Bavaria. Is it? I used to call it Bloodfirst. It's not. It's Bloodfort or something like that. They have that over here. With, you know, after dinner you have like a cognac or a port or something like that. And that's a digestant. There's elements of chocolate in that, dark chocolate. Definitely getting that now as well. Oh, this is really good. I mean, the pair of them are good. I will say that. And if it sounds like I was being harsh on the Batemans before, I wasn't being harsh. I was just trying to explain the differences. Oh, the jam that's coming from there now. It's like really strong strawberry jam. Wow. These really are amazing beers, I will say, and I really wish people in other countries could try these beers. I know they're expensive, and they are expensive for a reason. They use the best ingredients. Certainly that's the case with the Fullers. The Batemans stuff, this has been matured longer, and that's interesting because after, well, that was 2014, it's now 2022, so that's what, 8 years. After 8 years being matured, that has taken on a whole new, well, a whole different character, I imagine, to when it was first brewed. I'd love to taste it when it was fresh. I really would like to see what that is, or even after a year like this is. Oh, that is nice. And do you know what? Immediately in my head, when I tried the Batemans and I tried the Fullers, I'm thinking, well, the Fullers are going to win this hands down. But the more you drink that Batemans, that's a bit of a creeper, because the flavours that come through on that, yeah, they're not immediately apparent, but the more you get into it, they do come through. But this stuff, I mean, that I'm definitely getting some type of jam on there now. I imagine that's the sweetness and from the crystal malt that they use in this. Oh, that is so good. It really is good. Now, as I said before, I get that people may not like this. You may watch this review and think, oh right, I've got to rush out and either get some of this Bateman stuff or get some of the vintage ale. Try it and think, well, what the fuck was that dickhead talking about? Because this tastes like a fucking bag ladies period. I get it's not for everyone, but if you like flavour in your beer, you're going to get bombarded with flavour. And if it looks like I'm stuttering now trying to find adjectives, it's because it's true. Because they are so complex. The pair of these beers are so complex. With every mouthful, I'm getting different flavours and different aromas as well. I'm going to pour some of this stuff in there because I'm resting it on my work laptop. I better not fucking spill it. These both, well, peppery aromas there now, and a little bit of spice on the palate as well. I don't know whether that's. Oh no, that's definitely on the palate. Wow. Again, that's more that jam sweetness. You know, the sweetness you get from jam, that's really coming through now. Wow. Alcoholic jam. What's not to like about that? This is not cold at all. This is room temperature, and I think to appreciate it, that's how you need to drink it, because there are so many flavours. And I think if you put any kind of refrigeration on this, certainly if you take it straight out of the fridge, you're going to miss a hell of a lot. But I think at this temperature, you're getting everything. Certainly with this stuff, you get loads. Oh, that's even more spirit-like now. The alcohol, the ethanol, I should say. Well, ethanol is alcohol, isn't it? That's immediately apparent. This is definitely the more bitter of the two. I don't know whether I'm confusing that bitterness with the dryness on this. This has got a drier finish on this than the Fuller stuff, and I think that's probably because it's been more matured. I mean, this has been matured for 8 years. That's been matured for a year, and yeah, you can really get that. And I imagine that's why there was I wouldn't say a strong vinegar odour, but I was definitely getting sort of very, very slight vinegar overtones. They've gone there completely. I think it must have been where it's been building up in the bottle, because again they're both bottle conditioned. And I think this is a good example of what a matured beer tastes like. It's very rounded. I will say that. This is much more rounded. The flavours are more balanced compared to the Fullers. But I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, the flavours in the Fuller's beer are very, very bold. In this beer, I wouldn't say subdued, but they're rounded and balanced out. They're still there, but not one of the flavours is more dominant. With the Fuller's stuff, you do get quite a lot of that. Hang on, just remind myself. Well, again, oh, there's that. And that's really weird, because I've just picked that up, and to me, that's the yeast coming through there, because I get this aroma on Bengal Lancer when I first pour it out, and it's that zesty marmalade. So it's gone from like a really strong strawberry jam to like a zesty marmalade. Wow. And that could be what I'm drinking there, maybe affecting my senses, but that's what I'm getting now. That's sort of Bengal Lancer on steroids with that huge marmalade zest. Oh, it's lovely. A pair of them, really nice. Both have got their unique characters. You have to bear in mind, though, as I say, this has been matured for 8 years, and it's more rounded, it's more balanced. The flavours are still there, but they're just more on an even keel. With the Fullers, they're a bit more lively, if you know what I mean. Wow. And again, a different aroma. There's a tinge of sourness on that aroma now, which I really like. It's almost putting me in mind of a Flemish red ale. Wow. It's just fucking blown me mind. These two beers together. This is almost too much for me. I'm fucking sad fucker. But it is. I mean, the flavours on this are just blowing my mind, because it's almost like there's a different flavour in every mouthful. Again, more bitterness there, slightly sweeter on there, and that's just from pouring in a little bit more. Let me get the whole lot in there, see if I can. So there's none of this. And as I say, the temperature of these is more or less room temperature now, so that's probably why I'm getting so many flavours, because I think any refrigeration is just going to stifle some of them very subtle flavours. It's definitely smoother, we'll say that. That is a characteristic of like properly matured beer. The Fuller stuff, it's a little bit harsher, a little bit more coarseness to the flavours, if you know what I mean. It's difficult to describe, but they're more aggressive. So there's more aggressive, dark fruit, more aggressive malt, a little bit more ethanol in there as well. I definitely do get the ethanol in there too. A good example, if you've tried a Belgian quadruple, these are very much in keeping with that style, but without the hefty alcohol that the Belgians think they need to put on there. Well, I don't think they need to put it on there, but they do put on there. I mean, I'd put this up against any Belgian quadruple, because this really, to me, this is the pinnacle of English brewing. This is what we do best. And yes, you won't be getting this on cask in pubs, certainly not 8.5%. There would just be fucking carnage in pubs. And again, I want to make this point clear. These are 8.5% beers. you need to go easy with these. These are not guzzling beers. These really are beers to be savoured and sipped, almost like you would sip a port or a sherry. You know, just, you don't need to fucking guzzle it, because you're going to miss loads. They're not beers for chugging. And they put them in 500ml bottles, and I'm not complaining about that at all. But you need to go easy on these beers. They're 8.5%. And, you know, I've said it in a few videos before. I joke about when I read about units and the chief medical officer, you know, you've got to go easy with this stuff. It's not to be taken lightly, because 8.5%, certainly what I'm doing here, I'm drinking 2 8.5% beers in quite a short space of time. You've got to be fucking careful, because you can come a cropper. If you ever drank Belgian beers on a regular basis, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But, oh look, I'm getting more aromas now from this. Wow. That just smells like heaven. It really does. And there's vanilla on that now as well. And a nuttiness on the finish. There is a nutty, almost like a hazelnut type finish. Very subtle again. Wow. And to be honest, I think I'm going to have to stop it here. I've got to be careful, because I don't want to be slurring. I don't want to be coming across as a bit of a dickhead because I've had too much to drink on a video. I don't know if you saw the Carlin video, but I had a problem with my wisdom tooth. I've had that taken out. I haven't drunk in 3 days, so that was Thursday. It's now Sunday, so 4 days. I haven't drank in 4 days. And yeah, way to go. Start on 2 8.5% beers. And a 7.5% beer, sorry. Yeah, and I can already feel it going to my head. So I am going to cut it down now, and I'm going to get on to the next section. So what's the verdict on these two? Well, they are both fantastic beers from 2 fantastic breweries. I really do like what Batemans do. I recently reviewed the Rosy Nosy that they did, the Christmas beer, and that was really good. Really did enjoy that, and I like what they do. This is a perfect. I mean, this is 8 years old. This has been matured for 8 years, and it's a good example of what a beer, a bottle conditioned beer, will taste like if you can leave it on the shelf. Now, I could not leave that on the shelf for 8 years. There's no way that would happen, but that's been done for me. And it's nice to get that comparison, because this is very rounded. The flavours on this are very, very rounded compared to that. And aromas are just fucking amazing on this as well. It's very smooth as well. Very, very smooth. And that's what I'd expect in an 8-year-old beer that's been bottle conditioned. This only been it's only been conditioned for a year in a bottle. Black cherry, dominant flavour now. Wow. It's just, it's so complex. There's almost like a different flavour on every mouthful. And that's absolutely amazing. But you're probably going to ask me, or you're probably waiting for my verdict on these two, you know, which one is the best. And to be honest, there isn't going to be one, because these are 2 superb beers. I'm really not going to divide the two. I think it would be unfair. And the reason being, this has been matured for 8 years. It's got similar characteristics, definitely. Very complex, full of fruit, fair amount of ethanol. That's what they share in common. Quite malty as well. Lots of caramel malt, some slight toffee malt on the Batemans. But all in all, these two are fantastic examples of the barley wine style. Yeah, I'm not going to say one's better than the other. They are both unique and similar in a way. I think they're very special beers. If you want to try the Batemans, that's £3.75 a bottle if you order it from the brewery. The stocks on this will probably be limited, so if you want to get an order in, get it in sharpish, because you may miss out. It's worth checking out. So that's a good one to get hold of. The Fuller's Vintage Ale. Now, this 2021 version that I've just reviewed will cost you 20 quid. Now, I got this in a hamper with some other Fuller's beers, the porter and the stout. That cost me 37 quid. Now, I think that's a bargain, because if that's 20 quid, you get a bottle of this 2021, but you also get a bottle of 2020 in it as well. And they're both expensive beers. So get onto the Fuller's website sharpish, because I've just looked on there. The 2021, I think, is 20 quid, and the 2020 is 30 quid. So that's 50 quid, and they're charging you 37 quid for 2 of them bottles of vintage ale. But you also get a load of other stuff. You get, I think it's Bengal Lancer. You get the Black Cab Stout and the Porter, the London Porter, and you get the dodgy lager that I reviewed, the Frontier Lager. You get that in there as well. You get Golden Pride. It's worth doing, even if you're up north. Get it on mail order, and if you can resist drinking these two, they're good investments. Now, I don't agree with that. I think you should be just drinking it and enjoying it. But if you want to, keep it, if you can have the willpower to not drink it, then stick it on a shelf or stick it somewhere and return to it in 10 years. They will sell for a lot of money. People will buy that. But it's worth doing. But this stuff is cheap. It's £3.75 a bottle. That is fucking bargain. So get on the Batemans website, get some of this stuff. I don't know, order a t-shirt or something, because the postage, I think, is 7 quid, and you might think that's a little bit hefty, but it's not bad. I ordered a t-shirt from them. It was the Skull and Hammers t-shirt. It was a really nice one, and they didn't have my size. They only had, I think it was it 5XL or something like that? And the woman rang me up and said, we've only got a 5XL t-shirt. And I said, well, I'd have to drink all the fucking beer in your brewery to fit in it, so give us another t-shirt. And I've got this one. It's the Batemans Strong Ale. Apologise for touching the mic. You've probably been deafened now, but that was, I think that came to about 12 quid. That's a fucking bargain. I would have paid 12 quid for a bottle of that, because that's really nice. And I'm going to savour these 2 beers. I've got to drink these. I'm going to be so fucked after these 2. I'm not going to drink anything for the rest of the night. I can feel my tooth started playing up now and all. And there's no tooth there, it's just a fucking hole. So fuck knows what's going on there. But verdict on these are, if you buy any one of these, you're going to be a winner. They're great beers. I'm not going to separate them. I think it would be unfair on Batemans if I said Fuller's was better. And I think it would be unfair on Fuller's, because they're a fantastic brewer, if I said the Batemans was better. So go mad, buy the 2 of them. But yeah, they're great beers. Very good examples of probably the best examples of the English barley wine style. If you've never tried a barley wine, get one of these and you'll find out what barley wine's all about. So crack on. And remember, just like these 2, beer is working class champagne.
Like and subscribe. What a puppy gets it. Isn't that right, Purse? Yeah, get off.